Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live. We're starting the week off searching and seeking wisdom on a new topic. Hope that as you join us, that you'll be sure and share where you're joining from. And as always, want to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions, your comments, because that's what makes this show of value and certainly more engaging. So thank you for that. We always like to start off by talking about what we see wisdom as on the podcast. And for us, wisdom's a journey, and that journey begins with knowledge. And we gain knowledge either formally, informally, accidentally, on purpose. And hopefully, we approach each day with the option to gain some new knowledge, as the opportunities are great for that. One thing I do like to comment is that knowledge is not our power, because knowledge is all around us, it's very readily available. The key, though, is what we do with it. And that leads to the next step in this journey as a wisdom seeker. And that is that uh, uh, gaining understanding. And understanding is basically taking our experience and our knowledge and put them together. Use the knowledge that we have gained to begin to solve problems, make choices, begin to hopefully make better choices through the experience and understanding. And then the next step, which I believe is the most critical step, and that is to step into wisdom from knowledge and understanding. And that's when we begin to get a bigger perspective, a much bigger perspective. And that perspective is where we begin to see what's going on in us, outside of us, and see it through a bigger lens. We begin to see it outside of our own interest, outside of our own personal gain or whatever. And so we began to get that bigger picture perspective. As we do that, we began to understand and anticipate consequences more. And so we want to get that much bigger view. And for those of us that are of a spiritual bent, the way we kind of express it is that we're looking to see things through God's eyes, see that bigger picture with the lens of selflessness and love, rather than through just what is value to us. So that's the wisdom journey as we see it here on the Wisdom Seeker live podcast. And today we're going to talk about goals. You know, we talk about SMART goals all the time. It's a very common thing that we know. And there's nothing wrong with SMART goals, but I would suggest that we need to take it a step further. We need to make them wise goals. And the difference is that we begin to consider our goals from a wise view. Quite often, our goals are limited in our scope, because we are not approaching them with that big picture view of wisdom. Welcome, Claudia. Welcome, Cheryl. Glad to have you with us today. Look forward to hearing from you. Oh, from Cheryl from Mumbai. Welcome. Actually, last summer I got to visit India, and quite an amazing country. So, again, there's no need for me to talk about the details of SMART goals. There's plenty of information out there, and using SMART goals as a pattern for looking at goals is certainly a valuable tool. But I think, much like most of the tools that are out there today, if you use them by themselves, they lack the component of wisdom. And that is to begin to see that bigger picture and begin to consider our goals in light of that bigger picture. We want to consider the consequences beyond just what is the initial anticipated. We want to see the consequences not just for ourselves, but also for others around us. Welcome, Amer. Glad to have you, brother. Appreciate you dropping in. Hope you'll share some of your wisdom with us as we go along. So, SMART goals are great, but let's take it a step further. Let's go to WISE goals and consider goals in light of how they fit not just in the certain time frame, but how they fit in the big picture in our lives. What are the consequences that we anticipate, and what are the consequences? And this is where a WISE perspective comes in, is we begin to learn how to even consider consequences that initially we don't anticipate. One of my quotes talks about it's the unintended consequences that become a problem. And that is where wisdom helps us begin to see what those potential unintended consequences are as we set goals, as we make plans. The other thing about looking at goals from a WISE perspective, and part of wisdom, is do these goals fit us? Quite often when we're setting goals based on someone else's priorities. We're basing it on someone else's design and purpose and other people's visions rather than our own. And so by doing that, that can take a SMART goal and actually make it unwise. And so I just encourage us to really consider our goals. And it's great that you make them SMART, but consider making them WISE goals. Appreciate you too, Amer, really do. So how do we do this? And I think that the way that we go about it is, as we go through the goal setting process, we have to ask a question. And this is a fundamental question, maybe, that should even be considered before getting to a point of goal setting. But what is our design and purpose? And as a result of figuring out our design and purpose, what is our vision and mission and values? And when we begin to think in those terms first, then we can begin to consider making SMART goals WISE goals. Because then what we're doing is two things. One, we're causing our goal setting to line up with who we are, who we're designed to be, so that our priorities are established based on that piece of information, who we are, who we're designed to be. Secondly, because we began to, and in seeking wisdom, see that much bigger perspective, we can better evaluate the impact of our goals as we seek to complete them. And a lot of times we look at goals primarily in how they're going to affect us and how they're going to impact our world. Sometimes people will go a little further, and if these are business related goals, they may consider the impact on clients or whatever. But I think that we need to even take it to a bigger perspective. What is the impact on even people that aren't our clients? What is the impact? And this is an important one, is what's the impact on our family and those people closest to us? Because sometimes we grow unwise by missing not just that big picture, but the picture of those around us and how they're impacted, and looking beyond our own personal preferences, needs, desires. So we began to consider how we can take SMART goals and make them WISE goals. And I do think, and I don't believe that the very nature of SMART goals in and of itself, using the SMART acronym, is naturally a WISE goal. And that's why I bring it up this week, that we really need to consider to add wisdom as we're goal setting. And I think as we do that, a couple of things are going to be an outcome of it. One is I think we have a greater chance of succeeding in achieving the goals we set. And part of that's because if we're approaching them from a WISE standpoint, which includes that bigger picture, that part of who we are, and we consider those goals in that regard, then we are more likely to have less unintended consequences in the process. So again, we really need to consider, are our SMART goals also WISE goals? I would suggest that all WISE goals should be SMART goals, but not all SMART goals are going to be WISE goals, because they don't necessarily take that big picture into account. They don't consider it from the impact from that big picture standpoint. We just really need to consider that there is more to it than just the goal itself, and that if we aren't tying that goal to our WISE perspective, to our understanding in that big picture, then we've got a potential problem. We are likely going to suffer consequences that we don't realize, we don't intend or anticipate. So again, I'm encouraging everyone to, first of all, it's a good idea to learn SMART goal setting. That's a good tool to have. So I'm not saying SMART goals are bad. I'm saying take SMART goals and go to the next step as you use them. Welcome, Eunice. Glad to have you as always. Let's see what Eunice's comment is. It says, good goals are both SMART and WISE. Wisdom gives your goals heart, coming from experience and specificity. Indeed, I like that comment, Eunice, that if we are making our goals WISE goals, that it does indeed give heart. And part of the reason that is from a wisdom perspective, we are looking at that bigger picture. We're looking at the impact, not only in our own lives and our own setting, but also how it impacts others. So yes, I like the way you put that our SMART goals become WISE, and as a part of that is it gives it heart. And that's indeed true, because as we grow WISE, we can no longer practically, or with good conscience anyway, make decisions, set goals, and try to accomplish things in the absence of heart. How does it impact others? Not just how does it impact our own lives or our own company. So yes, that's a great way to put it. Thank you for sharing that. And by the way, I'll remind everyone, love to hear your comments, your questions. I prefer not to make this a monologue, prefer that we have a dialogue, and that we are seeking wisdom together on these topics, just for the record. So just as again, to bring it back around, SMART goals are fine. And it's a great tool, and learning how to use SMART goal design is great. But I would suggest that we do well to turn our SMART goals into WISE goals. And the way we do that is consider those goals beyond our own view, our own personal interest, and begin to apply them or see them through eyes of how does this impact my world, and how does it impact the people in my world? And the way we can do that is we have to really step back and see that bigger picture and begin to consider, okay, I've thought about what this means to me, but what does it mean to others? How does it impact others if I do this? Um, let's see. Sherry's got a comment. I'm sorry, Cheryl. My apologies, Cheryl. Her comment is that goals impact selling, set up the wisdom. Okay, thank you. And uh, goals are great tool design, the SMART goals. Very good. Thank you for that. And so we need to consider that wisdom can impact anything, including selling and impact on that. But considering that wise perspective as we set these goals. And, SMART goals are about being attainable and having time limits and being reachable and so on. That's fine. But how will these goals impact not only me, not only my company, but how will it impact others? How will it impact others than those that I intend for it to be an impact on? All questions of and usable to take our SMART goals and make them wise goals. And that's what we need to really do. As we do that more, we are more likely to be able to attain more of our goals in a more realistic time frame, and also determine better actions to help make those goals occur. That's all part of the wiser approach. And then also, as we approach it wisely, we begin to consider more than just the intended consequences, because for every choice we make, every goal we set, that there are consequences to them. And those consequences quite often are not, the problem doesn't become with the intended consequences, it becomes with the unintended consequences. And we see it in our culture today, where goals and designs were pursued, but not the unintended consequences weren't considered. And now we have, for example, in this area is especially a big one, and that's in medicine. Because of not approaching some of the decisions and goals and plans and things in the medical community, now we have a lot of real ethical issues that we struggle with, that nobody ever thought, well, that's going to be a problem one day. The unintended consequences that occur. And so we end up with moral and ethical questions, which quite often lead to legal questions and determinations, and it gets to be really complicated. Whereas if we approach these things with more of a wise perspective, we have a better chance of avoiding unintended consequences. And I have to say that part of wisdom, by the way, for us has to include all of ourselves. And I'll get into a little background on that, in that we're all created with a body and a soul. And most of us think in those terms on some level, but we also have a spirit. And part of ultimately gaining wisdom is to include all of us in that process, because part of including the spirit part of us is that it gives us better discernment, or in some cases, some would call it gut or instinct or whatever. Call it what you want. But if we begin to grow in wisdom and we gain that additional component, it helps us even with our day-to-day decisions. And it helps us begin to consider those consequences. And by its nature, as we approach things wisely, we see that bigger picture, and that includes the bigger picture over time. So we begin to also connect the dots between past decisions and current results. And that's how we begin to also learn about anticipating unintended consequences in our goals, in our planning. Again, I encourage everyone that planning has distinct and certain value, and very important that we do that. But we need to do that in light of more than just the moment, and more than just even, goals. Properly set goals have short-term, mid-term, and long-term considerations. And we need to do more than just consider even the short term to long term, which typically long term is 5 to 10 years. If we approach goal setting and consider it wisely, it takes on many years, many decades, and includes projecting out, considering beyond 10 years, 5 years, but considering our goals and their impact into a bigger picture. And for those of us of a spiritual base or spiritual bent, one of the parts of that wise view is that we go beyond even the current physical life that we live and consider things in light of eternity. And I know some of you probably either don't believe that way, and that's fine, or even have thought of what there is after this life. And I appreciate that, and that's fine. But if you're at least you gain the wisdom of the time frame of this life, past and present and future. And then if you are of a mindset that there's more beyond this life, then you bring into eternity as part of the consideration, the thinking processes. And when you begin to approach things from that fashion, we begin to consider things and consider consequences even better. If you're goal setting and not considering consequences in setting your goals, you got a basic foundational problem that needs to be addressed. So again, let's think about SMART goals are great. That's a great tool, and certainly something that we need to consider and use. But let's consider moving from SMART goals to WISE goals. Okay, my good friend Amer has a comment. I always appreciate what he brings. Wisdom is a complex concept that is often difficult to define. However, it is generally accepted that wisdom involves having a deep understanding of life and the ability to make sound decisions and judgments. Part of wisdom, then, must include ourselves. We must have a deep understanding of our own strengths and weaknesses, our values and beliefs, and our goals and aspirations. We must also be able to make decisions and judgments based on our own experiences and knowledge. Wow, Amer, you are one of my wise friends, and I appreciate it. And what you say is true. Part of gaining wisdom includes looking beyond the surface of ourselves. It has to include introspection into our lives, because part of what happens from an unintended consequences standpoint is a lack of understanding our own strengths and weaknesses as we consider our goals. Part of what I think we see culturally right now is a lot of misalignment. People that are seeking goals, making plans, not based on an understanding of who they are. It's based more on, well, this is the way everybody else is doing it, or this has the appearance of success for other people, and therefore it must be okay to do regardless. And so, again, what you say is true, Amer. That deeper understanding of our own selves has to be a part of making wise choices. And hopefully that's part of what we're doing. And in order to get an understanding of ourselves, if we only look at ourselves in the present moment, we're not going to get that understanding. In fact, if you really want to get a great understanding into yourselves, and you have the option to look at your family, talk to your family that is older generations than you are, and learn based on what their perspective of you are, then we have a better chance of making wise choices, because we're even approaching understanding ourselves more wisely. We begin to get that much bigger picture of ourselves, so that as we make these choices, that we get that alignment, that understanding of strengths and weaknesses and our values and beliefs. When we do that, we have a better chance of being aligned in our goals and being able to set them well to move forward with goals that meet us as a person. So thank you for that indeed, Amer. Very wise insight. Maybe sometime we should get you on the podcast and let you share some more of your wisdom, because I know you have a lot that would offer to a lot of people. So turning SMART goals into wise goals is to take SMART goals, use them well, but to consider our goals from a much bigger perspective of our world and what's going on, and a much better perspective of ourselves, who we are, what are our strengths and weaknesses, what are our values and beliefs, before we start out to set these goals. And when we do that, when we're better aligned with who we are and who we're designed to be, then we will find that we have a greater level of success achieving the goals, because as we set them, we're setting them with the better perspective in the process. So really encourage you, consider, learn how to do SMART goals and use them, but use them in a wise setting. Use them in a way that's going to give you a better chance of achieving those goals, and of not only achieving them, but achieving them in a way, excuse me, and this is important, in a way that will help bring us satisfaction. As we begin to set the goals, not just SMART, but wise, what we will find is, because they're better designed to fit our design, then we will find that they are much more satisfying. Quite often, the reason people don't set goals is because they go and try to set goals that are not aligned with who they are. And it's not uncommon that rather than them being primarily set, focused using our strengths, quite often they play into our weaknesses. And none of us want to be in a constant state of struggle. And none of us wants to not achieve things and feel like we are failures. And so as we begin to approach our goals, SMART goals, more wisely, then we have a better chance of that alignment and the satisfaction that comes with it. And as we set goals and that are wise, and they are part of who we are, then we're going to have more energy. We're going to have more hope to get those goals done, and then enjoy the satisfaction of achieving those goals, and not only achieving them, but achieving them well and in such a way that it feeds us. Part of the value of goals and actions is that if we do them well and then we begin to achieve them, it encourages us, it strengthens us to continue forward. It gives us more hope. And frankly, It helps us overcoming an sometimes conscious, sometimes unconscious sense of being a loser. And most of us struggle with that label as part of our life. That's another topic for another day. But I just want us to consider that we can do effective goal setting, and we can use SMART goal design as part of it. But regardless of whether you use SMART goal design or some other approach to goal setting, do them well, but then apply wisdom as you do the goal setting. If you do that, you not only have a chance of more accomplishment and achievement and satisfaction, but by the way, if you're doing those things wisely, it's going to impact all of us in a better way, especially the people around you, immediately around you, whether that's your family, whether that's your close friends, colleagues. All of us are impacted, and when we do that wisely, it makes a huge difference. So I think we've pretty much covered it, unless there's some additional comments to add to the conversation. Then I don't see any reason to continue to walk around it and talk about it. But I really hope and pray that you will consider taking your SMART goals and turning them into WISE goals, so that you can begin to benefit from that approach. And frankly, the rest of us will benefit from that approach, because the implications of taking your SMART goals and making them WISE goals is remarkably good. But I will say the converse is true, that if we are always only doing SMART goals and never considering the wisdom part of it, the negative impact, especially in the long term, can be remarkable. And that's why I think we see a lot of the dilemmas and the struggles that we see today with the consequences of goals that were set and not considered wisely. So with that, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here today. Hope that you will become a part of us, a wisdom seeker, and that wisdom seeking will be a part of your everyday life. Wisdom is not something we want to just get here and there, but something that we want to become a part of our life. As we begin to live wisely, the positive impact on our own lives is really, truly remarkable. And the impact on the lives of others that are part of our world is also very remarkable. As you look around, consider that maybe some of the adversity and issues that you face today are because you were not wise in your goal setting, and you're dealing with consequences that you never considered, the unintended consequences. So approach goal setting, be smart, but also be wise as you do so. We'll be back next Monday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern time, and we will seek wisdom in a topic. As always, if you have a topic that you'd like us to talk about and seek wisdom on that you think would be beneficial to you and others, please put it in the comments, or you can direct message me. Always open to consider those. I even sometimes like to do what I call an open mic day, where people can raise questions that they have and want to find wisdom in. And so look forward to it. God bless. Have an amazing week. And I look forward to seeing you and others back next Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and YouTube. Thanks, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next week.